Welcome to this conversation. We're talking about the Bilkis Bano gang rape case. The Supreme Court is hearing, I was hearing the matter today. The court has questioned the release of the 11 convicts in that case, done according to the remission standards, and has sent a notice to the Gujarat government for all of the paperwork. In fact, Justice K.M. Joseph today said, and I quote, "We have before us many murder cases where the convicts are languishing in jails without remission. In this case, where standards have applied uniformly, is this case the same as the standards that have been applied uniformly to other cases as well?" Now, this is a special bench of Justice Joseph and Justice Nagaratna that was set up to hear a clutch of petitions challenging the Gujarat government's decision to release these 11 men. Now, these 11 men were found guilty of 14 counts of murder and 3 counts of gang rape. Now, the details of this case are familiar for most of you, but for those of you who don't know, Bilkis Bano, her mother, and 3 other women were raped, brutally assaulted. There was a 17-member group of Muslim people, of which 8 were killed, 6 were missing, and among those dead was a small baby, Bilkis's daughter. There were many things that happened after that. The CBI, in its investigation, found that the police suppressed material facts, wrote a distorted version of the complaint. The CBI also found that the postmortem was not, it was shoddily conducted. The heads of the deceased corpses were severed after the autopsy so that they could not be identified. Bilkis Bano received death threats, after which that case was then transferred to Maharashtra. These men were found guilty, after which they were found guilty again by the High Court, and after which they were found guilty again by the Supreme Court. But the Gujarat government decided to release them on good behavior. What has happened now is that one of those convicts, one Shailesh Bhatt, was seen on stage along with a BJP MLA in Gujarat, just as the Supreme Court began hearing this case. Joining us right now to help us understand what is going on is Ms. Karuna Nundy, who is an advocate with the Supreme Court. Ms. Nundy, good evening, and thank you for joining us. My first question to you is this. These men have now been out and free for 7 months since, since Independence Day last year. Can we argue, or can we ask why it took so long for the Supreme Court to hear this matter? I mean, 7 months and one very crucial state election has gone by since.
It's a very good and very sad question, because all of this happened very, quite close to the state election. And it was clear that the Gujarat government was not denying their role in this, right? They were not saying that, look, we're quite happy to say that Maharashtra should decide, given that the Gujarat High Court had said, actually, and it's important for us to remember this, Mr. D'Souza, that the Gujarat High Court had said that the appropriate government to decide whether remission will happen or not is the Maharashtra government. Why? Because the trial had been transferred from the state of Gujarat to the state of Maharashtra on the exceedingly unusual ground that she would not get a fair trial. This woman who had been gang raped, who had been part of a sort of assault and rape that is unimaginable, that had had family members killed and raped in front of her, had this trial was transferred because it was said that even this level of heinous offense would not get a fair trial in the environment that was prevailing in Gujarat, at least at the time. Yes. And so the fact that the case was transferred by the Supreme Court to Maharashtra means that the trial finished in Maharashtra, and that was the appropriate government, and that's the decision the Gujarat High Court made. A decision was then made by the Supreme Court, and it is a final decision, so one can diverge with it and disagree with it, saying that it was the Gujarat government could consider the remission of the convict Radhesham, right? And the Gujarat government then, and this is the significant thing, that the Gujarat government then consulted with the central government, as it must, and the central government concurred, agreed, all before a state election. Now, the thing is that in most circumstances, you would think that, oh, but a state election, won't this go against them? This is not law. It's purely my reading and the reading of a number of political experts of the situation in Gujarat during the time before the election. It was something that the voter did not object to. This is something that I think that should really make us take a step back, because law does not operate in isolation, right? Law here has operated with the recommendations of the Gujarat government and the central government. The central government, our home ministry, saying that should these most brutal of rapists be have served whatever 50 to 60% of their sentences, then they should be granted remission, even though they came under the explicit exceptions that were set out by the central government for rape convicts, against rape convicts rather, and against those who had been awarded a life sentence. So why this special treatment? Why are these people sitting on the dais with the BJP? What has happened to the moral compass of our society? And how, at the very least, the law, of course, must be clear. And how do we set it back?
That was going to be my question. We did, of course, have the case mentioned before the Chief Justice, who then constituted a special bench to hear the clutch of these matters.
Yeah.
But even so, is this pendency, which is, for our audience to understand, delays because of dates not available in courts, why does it take 7 months, 8 months to right what is obviously so wrong?
There is an injustice that also happens by scheduling. For example, in the Aadhaar case, there were various contempts that occurred. Not occurred. The government committed various acts that could easily be considered contempt of court and contempt of the orders of the Supreme Court, and they were repeatedly not heard. A part of this kind of pendency can be laid at the door of not enough time, not enough judges, too many cases. But I think that when there is a case that signals to India's women that not only might justice take a long, long time, not only might they not pay the 37,000 rupee fine that they were supposed to pay, right? But that there is a possibility that if your rapist is popular with certain kinds of people, that they will be let off however heinously you were treated, whether your children were killed, whether your mother was raped.
Would you
message
explain
is
to
that?
our audience what happens, what's likely to happen now that the Supreme Court has sent a notice to the Gujarat government? What can we expect to happen next?
The Supreme Court will examine whether the notations in the files, at least that's what appears from the hearing today, the notations on the files give rise to a conclusion that the decision was reasonable and also unconstitutional, but also whether it is consistent with the other decisions, with the other similar decisions of the central government in this regard. Um, were they letting off all rapists in this situation, or did Bilkis Bano's rapists get special treatment? That will be the ambit of the examination.
And assuming that the Supreme Court decides, as one would expect, that this release does not stand up to the scrutiny of the court, are these men likely to go back to jail to continue the rest of their sentences?
If the decision is set aside, then yes, they would. But it's also important to remember that, this is a particularly egregious case, but in general, courts are reluctant to send free men back to jail. Status quo, possession is 9/10 of the law. The status quo is very, very important in our courts, the current situation, right? Whatever
Hmm.
the, who currently controls the property, whether the person is in or out. So if you're in, then it can take a long, long, long time to get you out, you know. And if you're out, then there can be a little bit of a presumption in your favor. But the thing is that this is obviously this case is crazy, right? So it's entirely possible, and I hope exceedingly likely, I'm not a soothsayer, that the convicts will be sent back. There are
In your
allegations
mind, and
that they molested people after they, yeah,
they came out of jail.
yeah.
Yes, on good behavior. But I do want to, just ask you, woman to woman at this point, citizen to citizen, when they appear on stage with lawmakers in our states, what kind of messaging is that for women? And it's important for our lawmakers to realize that this is not about Hindu women and Muslim women. This is just about women.
The messaging is that if you're the right kind of rapist, then you will be backed by the greatest powers that be. And you never know what the right kind of rapist will be. The rapist in Unnao had power, and the rapists in Bilkis Bano's case have power. The rapist in the case of the little girl in Kashmir had a lot of power. How do we know? It might be purely coincidence. It may be pure coincidence that one is currently not the right kind of victim. Precedence is precedence, and impunity is impunity. Let's be clear about that.
There was, this is the Hathras gang rape in which three of the accused were released. Do you believe that that tells a similar story?
It tells a very sad, very similar story. Um, you know, I think that, and what I think the tragedy is that even in cases that are so egregious and so violent that an entire nation of citizens sits up and says, enough, that even in those cases, that if you can have the kinds of miscarriages of justice that have occurred in my personal view, Bilkis Bano's case and in the Hathras case, then what luck is there for the common garden rape? And there are, let's face it, a lot of those. Uh, there is a huge amount of work to be done, and clearly you know that the greater strides that people make against rape and people make against patriarchy, not just women, there are steps back, and the time has come to have to ensure that there are hacks. I think, you know, um, and I think all fair-minded citizens need to apply our minds to that. And of course, the Constitution is one of the greatest hacks, right? That when you have a sort of majoritarian view that supports, or not majoritarian view, but a majoritarian power that supports rapists, that the Constitution and the constitutional courts have the power to step in and say, not in this case, not in any
Hmm.
case, not now, not ever. And
All
we
right,
hope.
Mr. Nundy, Ms. Nundy, thank you so much for speaking with us. I know you have to rush off, but I appreciate your time, and we do
Thank
hope
you
that
so much.
we see this case going in a way that restores confidence of women in this country, in law and order, in our governments, and in our judiciary. Karuna
And
Nundy,
restores
advocate of the people.
confidence for, thank you for saying that, but also restores confidence in all women, regardless of whether we are Hindu or Muslim or Dalit or not, or transgender or not. It can't be that you say that justice is only going to happen for a very tiny slice of women,
Yes,
and it
yes.
never works that way in any case. But yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. For our audience, we're going to continue to bring you these conversations. Our aim is to understand our law better, to understand what's happening in our courts better, to understand what's happening in our parliament better. If you have questions about something that's going on in the news, let us know, and we'll bring in an expert to break it down for you. Thank you so much for watching.